The Republican Party, one of the two major political parties in the United States, had experienced significant transformations since its founding in the mid-19th century. It has adopted changes in political stance according to the needs of the nation, based upon topics such as slavery, taxes, health, and government. This video will explore the history of the Republican Party, highlighting key shifts and milestones, the changes that occur in the relation of internal disputes and external pressures, as well as the role of the Republican Party in the political life of America.
Well, I haven't been in any of the conversations on building the CR out, so I haven't been involved in that process. So I can't criticize not being in the room. I mean, that's fair. But here we are today on Tuesday. We haven't seen any bill text. We're supposed to fly out on Thursday. We've had a long time to deal with it. So it's the same, basically same pattern of behavior. And here we are now.
Furious that she's not in the backroom meetings. Furious that Mike Johnson didn't invite her to the table. And furious that she's not holding the gavel anymore. Remember that farce? When McCarthy let her carry the gavel like she had done something to deserve it? What a joke.
The Republican Party was established in 1854 because of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which made it possible for the states to extend slavery into new regions. The party was launched from a coalition of anti-slavery activists allied with modernizers who sought to prevent the spread of slavery. The first Republican convention was held in Jackson, Michigan, and from this platform, that party grew rapidly to the point where Abraham Lincoln became the first Republican president in 1860s. Republican Party development was a historic event in the United States of America history. It emerged in direct reaction to rising tensions over the issue of slavery, which threatened to divide the nation. The Kansas-Nebraska Act permitted territories to decide for themselves whether slavery would be permitted within them, as being a very dangerous compromise that could create an expansion of slavery territories in regions which they had already been outlawed. The anti-slavery sentiment was also strong in the new Republican Party coalition, which included former Whigs, Free Soilers, and anti-slavery Democrats. The Republican Party of Lincoln, known as the Anti-Slavery Party, was involved in the Civil War to defend the Union. Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, which declared the freedom of slaves in the Confederacy. In addition, the 13th Amendment, 1865, abolished slavery throughout the U.S. As Reconstruction progressed, Republicans advocated for blacks' civil rights, and the 14th, along with the 15th Amendments, were added to the Constitution, which gave African Americans the rights of citizens and the rights to vote. These changes were met with intense opposition, leading to a time period of turmoil. Great industrialization and economic expansions happened in the late 19th century. That time was called the Gilded Age. The Republican Party, which controlled national politics, favored a policy that promoted economic growth and industrial expansion and was strongly connected with commercial interest. But this time frame was accompanied by political problems, with scandals like credit mobilier and whiskey ring tarnishing and party's popularity. The Gilded Age saw a high industrialization level and substantial new industries formed, including steel, rail, and oil. The Republican Party favored high tariffs, railroad construction, and immigration sources of labor, but the political corruptions, mainly the credit mobilier and whiskey ring scandals, damaged the party's position and led to calls for reforms. For the Republican Party, the progressive reforms in the early 20th century were another historical revolution that saw the party transformed into a modern party under the leadership of Theodore Roosevelt. He promoted antitrust legislation, food and drug legislation, and conservation during his presidency from 1901 to 1909. The Progressive Republican Party leaders like Roosevelt wanted to control big businesses and companies, safeguard the public, and preserve the environment. His administration involved itself in antitrust ventures and the breaking up of monopolies to return competition, pillars of progressive enactments such as Pure Food and Drug Act and Meat Inspection Acts made the food and medicine safe. Roosevelt also advocated for conservation, setting up national parks and wildlife refuges, which put down the foundation for the environmentalism. The progressive era also brought organizations of labor unions and growing demands for workers' rights, increasing focus on social justice and interference with industrial society. Franklin D. Roosevelt. And the New Deal established a change into the history of Republican Party beginning with the Great Depression. In countering the New Deal policies, Republicans mainly offered a policy of limited government and free enterprise. Leaders such as Robert Taft rose to power, championing non-interventionist foreign policies and fiscal conservatism. It was criticized, saying that it destroyed individuals' will and created government reliances. It preserved as the era which paved the way for the current modern conservative politics of the Republican Party with its principles of non-interventionism. And the party's stance during this time laid the groundwork for its future ideological battles and policy positions. The Republican Party was not very clear regarding civil rights the mid of the 20th centuries, particularly under the leadership of John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson, who advanced civil rights movements and passed the Civil Rights Act in 1964 and the Voting Rights Act in 1965. The 1960s saw a major shift as the party started to court Southern whites against the civil rights movement. This shift was formalized through Southern strategy, a political tactic used by Richard Nixon aimed to secure the allegiance of the politicized South, understanding that the white Southern voter is dissatisfied. The Republican Party came to use the so-called strategy based on the hostility of the states to federal intervention and their readiness to preserve the existing social order. In his presidential campaigns, Nixon effectively employed this strategy which altered the South from Democratic to Republican by the 1970s. But soon after Ronald Reagan was elected president in 1980s, the Republican Party underwent an irreversible transformation. He promised tax reduction, removal of economy regulation, a strong national defense, and a restrained federal government as part of his presidential program. Reaganomics, another name for supply-side economics, served as the impetus for Economy Recovery Tax Act of 1981, which lowered the top of marginal tax rates from 70% to 50%. Reagan also relaxed rule in the energy and telecommunications sectors. Reagan was politically and socially associated religious rights because of his support for traditional family values, school prayers, and anti-abortion position. Since he was determined to destroy the Soviet Union, his administrations launched a tremendous military built up and established the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI. There has been a series of changes and challenges in Republican Party after the time of Reagan's presidency. The 1990s saw Newt Gingrich's contract with America, an agenda to reform the House of Representatives with the aim of carrying out a conservative policy with proposals like welfare reform, tax cuts, and a balanced budget amendment. It works for Republicans to dominate both the House and Senate in the midterm elections of 1994. As the 20th century president, George W. Bush was associated with the war on tax reduction as well as monumental fiscal expenditure. September 11th led to the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, together with increasing the federal expenditure, but mainly the defense and homeland security. The cuts in tax that Bush devised were intended to increase investments within the economy, but it created the federal deficits. The two most notable conservative movements that rose to prominence at the end of the 2000s and through the beginning of 2010s, including the Tea Party. The Tea Party played an incredibly significant role in ideologically shifting the Republican Party even farther to the right in terms of both its platform and policy. This period also witnessed heightened polarization as well as partisanship in the American political system. The Tea Party emerged in response to the economic policies of Obama administration, particularly the Affordable Care Act and the federal response to the 2008 financial crisis. Critics said that these policies were evidence of federalism with infringements and personal freedom. It rapidly grew to the point that they were starting to protest, campaigning for conservative candidates in the Republican primaries. The Tea Party's influence was evident in the 2010 midterm elections, where Tea Party-backed candidates helped Republicans gain control of the House of Representatives. In 2016, the U.S. was shaken by the election of Donald Trump, which made the American Republican Party quite popular. The Trump campaign and presidency charged issues on immigration reform, trade protectionism, and no political correctness. During his term, his administration committed deep tax cuts, deregulations, and conservative judges' appointments. Trump's campaign appealed to the discontents that many Americans feel about economic change and globalization. Manufacturing, factory collapse, immigrations, and trades are problems that people were very worried about. He promised to make America great again. During Donald Trump's presidency, there were different investigations and controversies. Trump was impeached twice by the House of Representatives, one in October 2019 regarding the events around Ukraine, and the second time in January 2021 due to inciting rebellion after the attacks on the Capitol building. Despite these controversies, Trump maintained a strong base of support among Republican voters. The party was not let go Donald Trump yet and has not yet figured out its strategy for the future. The presidential election of the year 2020 and the win of Joe Biden over Trump demonstrated the out-of-work confrontation in this party. There are candidates who have served their connection with Trump, while others have continued to follow his populism. This party has many long-standing problems that haven't been resolved yet, such as healthcare, immigration, and climate change, all of which are happening in the context of a sharply divided political system. The 2020 election was closely fought, and despite the claims by the candidate himself and the others of fraud, which have been proven to be baseless. No proof was presented. The matter further fragmented the party, especially with some adherents endorsing Trump's allegations while others sought to restore the party to foundational conservative politics. Indeed, the evolution and developments of Republican Party are characterized by substantial changes and reforms, which are similar to the changes in the rest of America, from an anti-slavery party to what the Republicans are today. All these have undergone transformations due to the ever-shifting political, economics, as well as social philosophies. In this manner, the success of the party and the ability to capture a substantial share of the emerging electorate will play a significant role in the future development of the American political process.